Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. My name is Andy Herman. You can always follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for joining me. I know I like to generally stick to around 10 minutes, but today may be my longest episode yet because I'm going to be talking about the Packers injury report today, and it may take me a good 45 minutes by the time this is all done to try to get through all the injuries because little would you know that the Packers just had a bye week a couple weeks ago to maybe get a little healthy and seemed really healthy just a week ago because this injury list is ridiculous and there are a lot of very talented players that are on it and could really affect the Packers by being out this weekend. So let's kind of go one by one. Who's out, who's doubtful, who's questionable, and within that questionable group, who's likely to play, who's probably not going to play, or at least very, very questionable. Let's start with the outs, the players that for sure are not going to play. Tyler Lancaster and Tyler Ervin. Now, of everyone on the list, maybe those aren't the biggest names, but Tyler Lancaster is a very important run defender, and over the course of the last few weeks, he's played better in that role. He's definitely a specialist. You're not going to get somebody who is rushing the passer or getting a ton of pressures, but he is very valuable on early downs to being able to stop the run, and losing out on him means Kingsley Keke, potentially Montravius Adams, more on him in just a second, or some of the depth players are really going to have to step up and be better against the run, more stout against the run. David Johnson hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire, but he's definitely somebody that you still don't want to just let run wild and you're going to have to account for. So Tyler Lancaster being out in this game, maybe a little bit of a bigger issue than maybe some would realize. Tyler Ervin, we don't have to go back very far to know how much the Packers offense missed Tyler Ervin just a week ago against Tampa. Listen, the previous few weeks, it's not like they gave Tyler Ervin the ball a lot. It's not like they handed him the ball a ton on some of these jet sweeps and reverses and end arounds and orbits and whatever other motions that Matt LaFleur wants to throw out there. But he is a very unique player where he brings this blend of running back, punt returner, wide receiver, gadget player, and Green Bay just doesn't have that guy with Tyler Ervin out of there. They used Aaron Jones in that role. Oh, by the way, he could be out as well. You could put Darius Shepard there. He just doesn't threaten teams the way that, maybe a Tyler Ervin does. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see who they put in that role. Maybe Equanimeous St. Brown, who struggled last week, wasn't on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. You can tell he's still kind of getting his feet underneath him after not playing for over a year. Again, Darius Shepard, but they don't really have that guy. So these are two big losses, even though you may just think Tyler Lancaster, Tyler Ervin, all right, they can move on from those, no big deal, no harm, no foul. But those are two fairly big losses, two players who have significant roles within the offense and the defense. Let's move to the doubtfuls. And there's some big names here. David Bakhtiari, Kevin King, and Darnell Savage. And unless something spectacular happens, it certainly seems like all three of these players are not going to play. King practiced, seems to have some sort of setback. Practice on Thursday had some sort of setback. Did not practice on Friday. Listed as doubtful. That is a really bad sign that he had some sort of setback or didn't practice, and now he's listed as doubtful. You got to think Green Bay is going to be cautious with him and that he will not be a part of this game plan. And with wide receivers and the depth that the Texans have, with Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb and Will Fuller, not having Kevin King definitely could be an issue in this game. Same thing goes for Darnell Savage. He has played very safe football, has taken good angles to the ball, has been that deep safety a lot of times. Him and Adrian Amos have been interchangeable in that regards. Losing him definitely going to be detrimental to the Packers as well. So that is another potentially big loss. And I don't need to tell you how important David Bakhtiari is to this roster. So losing all three of those guys on top of Tyler Lancaster and Tyler Ervin, definitely a huge blow for this team. So all three, Bakhtiari, King, and Savage, listed as doubtful and look unlikely to play. There's 5 players that are listed as questionable, but I'd almost put them in 3 different tiers. I would say there's 2 that are really questionable, and that's Aaron Jones and Montravius Adams. And I think those are going to be more your game time decisions. Neither of them practiced on Friday, which is never a good sign. Based on how cautious Green Bay has been, I'm very hesitant to say that Aaron Jones will play in this game. I think it's more likely that he doesn't than that he does. Again, given the fact that he didn't practice, if you've got a tight quad and you're not feeling it in your legs, you don't want to mess with that. So I think it's more likely that he does not play. Montravius Adams, a foot injury. He's been bothered by this foot going back all the way to training camp. I should say, I don't know if it's the same foot, but he's been bothered with foot injuries going all the way back to training camp. I'm going to assume it's probably the same foot, but again, I don't know that for sure. Either way, if something flared up again and he's got a foot injury, it would not surprise me to see him get arrested as well and not play this week. I think those are two of your more game time decisions. I think a true questionable, maybe 50-50, is Robert Tonyan, who did not practice, missed portions of last week's game, but did practice on Friday, which is a good sign for him. He's listed as questionable. I'm leaning more towards it's likely that he's going to play, but we'll see. I think that's maybe one of those more 50-50 toss-up type of ones. Maybe not an exact game time decision, and the fact that he practiced Friday is certainly better than Montravius Adams and Aaron Jones and all the doubtfuls look at this point, but I think he's probably more of a coin flip. And then your two players that I would consider probable who are listed as questionable, Corey Linsley and Preston Smith. Both of those guys practiced on Friday. Linsley practiced in full, Preston practiced. So I think those two are probably two players that you're going to see up and active, even though they're listed as questionable. But still, if you're looking at players who could be out in this game, Tyler Lancaster, Tyler Ervin, David Bakhtiari, Kevin King, Darnell Savage, and then the two real questionable ones, Aaron Jones and Montravius Adams, along with Robert Tonyan, who, again, I would lean is going to play, but that is a lot of talent that is going to be out in this game. That doesn't even count the guys that are on IR like Alan Lazard. So we'll see what happens and how Green Bay deals with this. Here's how I think they could make some of these moves. Let's start at running back. Let's say Aaron Jones and Tyler Ervin are not able to play. That leaves them with just A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams, which, first of all, what a statement to say that you're without your gadget player in Tyler Ervin and your 1A running back, your Pro Bowl caliber running back in Aaron Jones. And you can say, oh, by the way, you still have A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams to play. That is incredible, the depth that they have at that position. Most teams don't have that type of depth at the position. And you do have to feel some level of excitement that we may get to see a little bit more of A.J. Dillon. You'd never want it to be at the expense of Aaron Jones, period, end of story. But this is a second-round pick who we've seen glimpses of and has looked good in those small glimpses. We may get to see an extended A.J. Dillon, this coming Sunday. And again, I think anytime you get to kind of unwrap a present a little bit and see what he can do with extended playing time, I think there's always a level of excitement with that. So I also think Dexter Williams is a legitimate call-up opportunity from the practice squad as a number 3 running back, especially knowing what they like to do and rotate running backs in and out. I don't think they ever want to be in a situation where if either Dillon or Williams were to go down, they're just left with one running back. So I think it's very, very likely if Aaron Jones is in fact out, even if he's not, they may not know that by tomorrow that Dexter Williams gets one of those practice squad call-ups this week. Along the offensive line, I think with David Bakhtiari being doubtful and likely not playing, Green Bay has 3 players that they could potentially call up, and I do think they're going to need to call up one of them because they'd only be left with 7 otherwise. So 3 names, Ben Braden, Ryan Pope, and Zach Johnson, all in the practice squad, all could get bumped up. I don't think Ben Braden is likely. He just got in. He did spend a cup of coffee with the team last year, so he may know some ins and outs, but you got to think that they would lean towards the guys who have been there a little bit longer so far this season. Zach Johnson, this is no disrespect to Zach Johnson. He's a rookie coming from North Dakota State, but of all 80 players on the roster in training camp, I thought he was unequivocally the worst. And the worst NFL caliber player is still a hell of a football player, don't get me wrong, but he still has a long way to go in his development. The practice squad's a perfect spot for him. He has upside and talent, but he's simply not ready at this point. I'll be totally transparent. I don't know a ton about Ryan Pope, but based on what I saw to Zach Johnson and based on Ben Braden just getting to camp, I'm going to say that Ryan Pope may have the advantage in getting that call up, but whoever it is, I would expect one of those 3 to maybe get the practice squad call up as well. Another position that could get a call up either to the active roster or from the practice squad is defensive tackle. Again, with Montravius Adams being questionable and Tyler Lancaster being out, they need a body there. Billy Wynn seems like the most logical, but they can't just call him up to the active roster since he's been active for 2 games already. He would have to be added to the roster, which isn't a huge deal. They do have that spot available, but if they wanted to just elevate someone from the practice squad, maybe not go through that process of having to bring them up to the active roster, Willington Prevalon could be somebody who could make some sense there. Somebody I actually really liked as an undrafted free agent in camp and thought that he could make an impact at some point. Probably not this year, but I still think he's got some talent there and could be an interesting call-up should he get the call. Other positions that you just have to kind of take a look at, defensive back, I'm going to be really interested with Kevin King. If he is out, do they go back to Josh Jackson, who I thought struggled? He made some plays, but I thought struggled. Again, those ups and downs, inconsistencies. Does Kadar Hallman get the nod? We're not talking about big physical wide receivers here. We're not talking about, players like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin a week ago. Randall Cobb, Will Fuller, and their, Brandon Cooks, their stable of wide receivers, more on the small, quick side. Kadar Hallman could make a lot more sense than maybe Josh Jackson this week. That's where I would not, that's where I would go in this situation is Kadar and not Josh Jackson, but that'll be another interesting decision they have to make, as well as Darnell Savage at safety. They could go Raven Green, but I expect them to go Will Redmond. It seems like they want to keep Raven Green in that hybrid linebacker role, and when a safety has been out, it's been more often than not Will Redmond that's been taking that position. Vernon Scott could also get a look, but I think you want, again, with Deshaun Watson and those wide receivers, I think you want more coverage back there, and I think Will Redmond makes more sense filling in for Darnell Savage. If it was Amos that was out, Vernon Scott maybe could make a little bit more sense. Maybe Raven Green takes that spot, but with Savage being out, I actually expect it to be Will Redmond. If Tanyan's out, I expect them just to kind of shuffle in Mercedes Lewis, Jay Sternberger. Maybe we see a little bit more of John Lovett in that fullback role, but I don't necessarily expect them to make any moves. Hopefully he's able to go. I think those are kind of it. We covered just about everyone. We covered the defensive tackle, Tyler Ervin, and so on and so forth. So those are the main injuries. Green Bay's got a lot of decisions to make with who they want to call up and in what direction they want to do with this game plan. You hate to see it. Kamal Martin could also be a player that could be ready to return. He doesn't necessarily replace anyone that's hurt this week. Christian Kirksey, of course, is still hurt, so he would certainly help, but doesn't necessarily fill in for any of those players this week on the injury report, but would still love to see Kamal Martin back in action in some capacity. So look for a lot of moves, whether it's players moved to the active roster like Kamal Martin, maybe a defensive tackle like Billy Wynn, and then for sure I think expect at minimum, those 2 call-ups, if nothing else tomorrow, even if they don't make any roster moves. So I expect some movement from Brian Gutekunst and company from 1265 Lombardi on Saturday. That's going to do it for me. Before I get out of here, I do want to shout out Dusty Evely, who has a brand new children's book. Make sure to check it out. Go to his Twitter handle, and you can check it out and see where to order it. You can order it online. I cannot wait to order mine. Dude is the best guy in the world. Also, make sure to check out his film room from yesterday. I know this is my longest one yet, and I'm trying to get out of here in about 10 minutes, but like I said, with an injury list that long, you had to kind of go a little bit more in detail, so I appreciate you sticking with me. I will be back tomorrow for my 3 keys to the game, Texans and Packers, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.